Namaste. In continuation with Sri Aurobindo's writings, volume 19 of collected works of Sri Aurobindo, Essays on the Gita, part 6. The Gita, as we know, is not just a karma yoga as is commonly understood, but the triple path, as Sri Aurobindo says. It is the triveni of jnana, karma, and bhakti. Meaning thereby that it engages all the three aspects of a being: the mind, the heart, and the will. So that way it is in its own way a kind of integral path. For the mind, the Gita starts from there, and because man is a mental being, and it teaches us how to turn the mind inward and upward rather than be engaged in outward activities and turning it downwards for petty ends, for narrow desires, ambitions, etc. So when we turn the mind inward and upward, it tends to enter into a state of impersonality. What the Gita is, it can be perfected into a state which is called as Akshar Brahma. So right now our jiva is involved fully in Sharobhav. It can withdraw from that and enter into a state of vast impersonality. It is a great liberation. And it gives a certain kind of nivrati from the way we are engaged in activities. And if we deepen it, it can lead to a state of nirvana. But then the question arises, is nirvana consistent with works? And the Gita says yes, very much. So it adds the second aspect, because very often people who just practice this, as in Sankhya Yoga and certain forms of yoga, they then speak of works as its utility is over. You just carry on with it mechanically, whatever is shesh karma, or prarabdha karma, whatever is to be done just mechanically for the body, you do it and leave the rest. But that's not the teaching of a scripture as great as the Gita. It says no, you do works, and works also become a means for the union with the divine. And how they become union with the means of union with the divine? So the Gita explains to us what is works. So work is the creative impulsion in its origin, visarga, from the divine, adhyatma. So there is a fourfold understanding of the divine. We'll just come to it in a moment. So the divine himself releases the creative energy through which all impulsion goes into nature, into creation. But as this impulsion enters into us, there is a pure form of it, and it gets distorted and mixed with the movements of lower nature. So the pure form of it is what is Swabhava. In each creature, there is the pure impulsion of the divine. And that is what the Gita means by saying, I am the desire which is consistent with dharma in the jiva. So what is consistent with dharma? When Bhimasen takes the vow of killing 100 brothers of Kauravas, the Kauravas, and at the end of the war, Gandhari asks him, couldn't you spare at least one of them? And Bhima says that if there were 200, I would have killed 200 of them. Now, it may sound very strange to the ordinary human mind, but this is the Swabhava which comes naturally within Bhima. It seems perfectly natural. If we read through the Mahabharata, that's how Bhima is. Otherwise, he would not be Bhim, but Yudhishthira or somebody else. So, this impulsion in us, which is deep within, embedded in our soul as the way of being of the divine within us, to obey that, to follow that, is the true works that we must engage in. But this impulsion is often mixed with the lower nature, the desired self, the ego, fear, satisfactions of various kinds, pleasure, etc., etc., anger when it is not fulfilled. This has to be removed. So to remove it, the Gita gives us a very wonderful path. Do it nishkam bhav. So the moment you do nishkam bhav, the desire, the knot of desire gets immediately weakened, because you are acting based on your inner impulsion, what is your most natural, deepest self. But you are not doing it for the sake of personal pleasure. Now that breaks the knot of the desire self. So do it in a nishkam bhav. Second, the work must go back to its originator. And therefore the cycle is completed when we send it back to the divine through a state of inner offering. So by remembering and offering the work to the divine, So slowly this impulsion becomes more and more truer, stronger, more beautiful, lifted up to great heights. So this way, when we live life this way, we enter into a state of yogaha karmashu kauslam, because now it's purely the body which is doing the activity. And what is informing the body is nothing else but the divine consciousness. It's not mixed anymore. So by offering the work back to the divine, it opens the floodgates of a greater and greater action, mightier and mightier action. So having said that, now comes the third aspect of the Gita, that who is this divine to whom we are offering the works? Is it just a limited Godhead Krishna? But Sri Krishna himself reveals that as the avatar, he is the divine who has, by his own pressing upon his own nature, he stands today in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So he is not to be taken, I won't use the word mistaken, because he is both. He is the personality which has manifested in the Vrishni clan and stands there in his human persona, holding the reins of the chariot of Arjuna. But he is also, in its deepest truth, the Purushottama who has consciously entered into this creation, pressing upon his own nature to conduct the march of civilization, Lok Sangrahat. So, now opens the doors of bhakti. Who really is this divine to whom we are offering the bhakti? What really is bhakti? So, bhakti comes from, as we all know, bhaj. The root is bhaj. And though there are various ways we can understand bhaj, but bhag, it comes, there are two parts and you join them. But my spontaneous intuitive sense, I have not done it from the Sanskrit point of view, is like we use the word bhag also for the joy. Bhag, in the four great Godheads, you have bhag, which is delight, the last which comes, enjoyment. So he whom we take joy in. So who is a bhakta? Bhakta is one who takes joy in the divine. So it's not a mechanical thing which is being done just for the sake of khana purti. Okay, I have written my name in the register. I also went to the ashram for 2 minutes, did my pranam. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. That will come to a little later. But true bhakta takes delight in the name of the divine, in serving the divine, in hearing the divine. That's why we see the stages of bhakti which are classically described: manana, shravana, chintan, darshan, nididhyasana, all of them. He loves to think of the divine. For a bhakta, wherever there is something of the divine going on, he loves to be there. You see that story as children we heard about Hanumanji, also about Narad. So we were told wherever there is Ram Katha, Hanumanji comes and sits. So it was so nice always to feel he is present around. And also about Narad, that don't leave the asan and go when you are doing puja of Narayana, because Narad will come and occupy it. Because he is all around, wherever there is this, manan, then shravan, hearing the exploits of the Lord. That is the great significance of Bhagavad, the great significance of reading works of life of Shri Aurobindo and the Mother. Often I tell people, don't want to read, the metaphysics and etc. It's difficult. But just read the life of Shri Aurobindo and the Mother. It's so liberating. And personally, I find it even more liberating. Because immediately you come in contact with the personality of the Godhead whom you adore. When Mother was asked who is the divine, and one of the answers she gave is, one answer she gave like to a jnani, the divine is, you are the divine in disguises. When he asked, who am I? So Mother said, the divine in many disguises. But to somebody else, she says the divine is that which you adore in Shri Aurobindo. So bhakta loves to hear, shravana, manan, he loves to think of the divine. This is what giving means, self-giving. With the thoughts, give your thoughts to the divine. So shravana, manan, darshana. So of course the true darshan is inwardly. The image of the beloved must become clear to the heart of the seeker. But also outwardly, when you see a photograph of the Mother, even the symbol, you halt, you suddenly, you're just wonderstruck. So that's because darshan. Then nididhyasana, you are constantly meditating, reflecting, and various forms of relation then one begins to form with the divine. But who is this divine and what are the various ways bhaktas approach? Now the Gita brings out this very interesting division of bhaktas in 4 categories. We can look at upon them as divisions. We can also look at them as a evolutionary hierarchy. So 2 are inferior type of bhaktas and 2 are the superior type of bhaktas. The 2 inferior are Arth and Arthati. Arth is somebody who in a moment of crisis calls, Lord. It's not like which name you are calling. It's that Arth, Lord. And he responds. He knows that I am being called. He is fortunately not a slave of names. Names, each name represents a quality of the divine. But he knows that the Lord knows that the child struggling with nature in creation needs me. And then there is Artharthi. Artharthi who is turning to the divine for material benefits and gains. Then the 3rd category of bhakta is Jigyasu. So that's why, people read Mother and Sri Aurobindo because they are Jigyasu. They are bhaktas but of a Jigyasu kind. They want to know more. So one of the ways people often say life divine is difficult, this is difficult, that is difficult. Well, first answer is life is difficult. So should we say we are not going to live it? Why life is difficult? The person next door to me sitting all the time whose face I may see may be difficult. So should I stop doing? Difficulty is challenge of life. But why should we read Mother and Sri Aurobindo? Because we love him. So it should be read as bhakti, with that bhakti, jigyasu. I love the Lord. What has he written? What has he spoken? What does he want me to do? So obviously somebody who loves the Lord would want to know. So there is the 3rd kind of bhaktas who are jigyasus, who are keen to know about the divine, his attributes, his various aspects, his life, his works and everything about him. So this is the 3rd kind, the jigyasu. And this idea of putting a sacred book in, as Sri Aurobindo describes in Savitri, wrapped in silken strings and kept on sanctified desk, only to be read occasionally, this should go. It's a Lord's letter, just like a beautiful letter from somebody we love, we want to read again and again. So we can read anywhere and any time. At least for me it was like, even during exams, MD selection exams, I was reading Mother, even sitting in the bathroom and everywhere, all barriers had gone, like a Besharam. What is there? Why not? So, you are jigyas, you want to know more and more and more. And then the final category is the Jnani. He knows and therefore he loves. Because the more you know the divine, the more you realize the wonder of grace. A jigyasu may have some doubts that, why this happened to me? What is the divine plan? But a bhakta, Jnani, knows that this was the best thing to happen to me. This is grace. He begins to become conscious of the grace. So we have these 4 categories of bhakta, and a natural question arises then that this 1st and 2nd category are seeking desire. And we are being told to, and the Gita says all of them, the Lord blesses. They are special to me. They are to me. So he says, why these 2 categories are, because you have to get rid of desire. Why they are also accepted by the divine. And then the Gita answers, they are, when you compare with ordinary humanity, which doesn't even have faith in anything higher, so the divine takes delight in them. And when you connect yourself with the divine, it is like the hen and the golden egg. So every day you go, you get a golden egg, you get a silver egg. After some time you say, what about this hen, this wonderful hen? Who is this who is giving me what I am seeking? Who is he? Who is she? So it is the upward side of the famous Hindi idiom, Anguli pakad ke pahucha pakadna. You catch hold of the finger, then you want to catch the entire person. But it is generally used in a negative sense. That, give a little leeway to somebody, he tries to take full advantage. But the divine wants. He is not happy giving us only half a little sone ka anda. He gives himself, but to claim him, we have to give ourselves completely. So, when we give ourselves completely in all sincerity to the divine gives himself to us. And that is the ultimate acme of union that we seek. So, these are the category of bhakta. So, how should he do bhakti? Is it a particular strot we must read? Is it an auspicious time? Is it a, particular vigraha to which we must worship? So the Gita clarifies. It says, Patram, Pushpam, Phalam, Toyam, pick up a drop of water, a leaf, anything you can offer. What a wide conception of bhakti. And what is the asana on which you must sit? Shraddha. It says it must be done with Shraddha. He who has Shraddha goes across. Shraddhavan labhate. And he who doesn't have a Shraddha, who is full of Ashraddha, it is like, Mother help me, but there is a doubt coming in. Who knows? Will she hear or not hear? I don't know really. Does she hear? Now, we are cancelling, making ourselves closed. So, Shraddha is important. It is the asana on which we should sit. And then, what is the mantra? The Gita does mention a mantra at one place, Pranav, Om. But basically, it is like any name you pick up, any name, any symbol. Sri Aurobindo universalizes it still further in Synthesis of Yoga. Any name, any symbol, any smallest wicket gate, any offering. Who is the person who can do bhakti? Is it specially only for Brahmins and the higher caste and the Kshatriya? No. The Gita goes on to say, even a woman tied to 100 bonds and the fallen, the outcast, the evildoer who has fallen into the darkest state, if he takes my name, oh Arjuna, regard him as a saint. I often say this to people that never ever talk harshly to a bhakta. Never ever try to demean or belittle, because Sri Aurobindo says in Synthesis, he is the very self and favorite of the divine beloved. He regards him. He is on bhaktas. There is a special. That's why we see in our Indian thought to what extent the divine takes care of the bhaktas. Banasur, Krishna himself is against fighting too, but he's a worshipper of Shiva. It's a difficult state. Or we go still further. Some of these bhaktas, Jalandhar, he is not even a bhakta himself. He loves his wife. Depending on which scripture you are reading, Vrinda or Tulsi, doesn't matter. And the wife loves Narayana. And of course a husband. And because the wife loves Narayana and this man loves the lady, Shiva cannot kill him. The destroyer cannot kill him. Why cannot kill him? They all say, why are you toying? Why don't you try that ultimate Trishul? No better weapon than that into his heart. He says, I cannot enter his heart. Why? Because in his heart is Vrinda. So what about that? And in Vrinda's heart there is Narayana. How can I do it? So that's when we have the story of Narayana going and assuming the form of Jalandhar, and the rest follows. So we have a tendency sometimes, even I have seen people in various circles, oh Bhakta, they are sentimental lot. There is a dialogue in one of the movies. Do not underestimate the power of an ordinary man. I would say never underestimate what stands behind a Bhakta. Because in his heart, God dwells. And that's what the Gita says, that he who remembers me, I dwell in his heart. And he dwells always in me. And he should be regarded as a saint, even he may be a most fallen being. Because quickly I release him from the bonds of sin and take him higher and higher through the higher and higher states of consciousness, and he becomes a saint. So this is the what we must understand, that anybody can do bhakti. So all these we'll hear often from various people about Hindu thought. The Gita, which is a scripture of scriptures, very categorically says that. Then, who is this God to whom all this bhakti is being offered? Now the Gita opens a whole vast vision. Who is this God? In the Vedas we have this question, Kasme Devaye Havisha Videham. Whom should we offer? Agni, Indra, Vayu, depending upon Vedas will say first Agni, because he is the leader of the march of evolution. Then next Indra, because Indra will respond, Pyusa. Another Upanishad will say Vayu, because he is the one who will carry the Avi. Without Vayu, whatever you may offer, nothing will go up. He expands the sacrifice. Here Shri Krishna says, you offer it to me and I take it. Even when you offer to other gods, Vayu, Agni, Indra, ultimately I am the one who gives. So here all the Godheads are reconciled in the one great God. This great truth which we often forget in the one great God. But who is this Krishna who declares himself as Purushottama? He says they are very short verses, but they are very powerful. The reason why I don't recount is because Sanskrit, they should not be an Ashuddha Ucharan. So, but they are very beautiful. He is Adhyatma. So who is Adhyatma? He is the spiritual bhav within everything. The soul within. The bhava in the soul. The adhya. Atma. So he is the impulsion in the soul. That's how Swabhava comes from there. And in its origin, it is, he says karma. What is karma? Creative energy. Visarga. I am the one who releases through the bhava in the soul. So he is Adhyatma. Then what about this world of multiple objects? Stars hanging in space, the trees, the plant, the river, the mountain. So he says, I am Adhibhuta. I am the essence, the truth behind all these various becomings. Bhutadi. Bhutadi is literally various elements. So all the 5 elements, if you go to their ultimate truth, it is He who stands behind it. And all these varied manifestations, outer objective manifestation, is myself. So he is Adhibhut. But what about subjective states? These gods are not just governing physical inner existence. Peace, light, various aspects of inner state that we go through. What about them? So he says, I am also Adhidev. So he is also the Godhead behind the gods. So he is Adhidev. All the gods and all the psychological states, inner states, he is the Lord behind them, Adhidev. And at the end, the one who conducts this entire universe and all its operation through a vast yagna, to whom whatever is offered in whichever way, to whomsoever God comes, and the response comes from him. So he says, I am Adhiyagna. He is the Yagya Purush. So we see this 4-fold description of the Gita. It's very, Sri Krishna doesn't emphasize much on it because he doesn't want metaphysics. These are verses where you can clearly see the Gita was given on battlefield. Because you want to know more, and Sri Krishna quickly goes through. Who am I? So he just starts revealing. And then he starts revealing his power of becoming. And there he says, of course he has already revealed that I am in the Sharobhav, in all this mutable world, as the essence of everything. And we have spoken about that. Then I am behind all manifestation, including he says I am the gambling of the gambler. Why? Because the gambler is gambling, he needs to be clever. And I have a very nice story which shows this truth. Mother has done many things which outwardly look very seemingly that she did for this reason, but you can see a great truth being revealed through that. So in the Gita, when Sri Krishna says, I am the light of intelligence, in different ways he says, I am the essence of the flower, Gandha, and I am the, ras in waters, I am Vasuki among the Nags, etc., etc. So at one place he says, I am the cunning of the gambler, gambling of the gambler. So it looks, what? Now you see, there is a story of the mother. I use this to explain this. So the story goes that there are people who are gambling on the ship on which mother was traveling. And there was a man who with this cunning was actually, obviously, he was looting somebody who had ultimately lost all his wealth. And he was in a very distressed state. And Arth must have inwardly cried and mother is there. So she took pity on him and said, can I play on his behalf? Just one hand I'll play. And the man said, are you sure? He has already lost everything. She said, it doesn't matter. And the mother played, got back everything and gave it back to him. So he's just wondering how she could get it. Mother doesn't reveal the mystery there. She said, I could see all the cards. So you see, she could see all the cards. She had that capacity and the vision. She said, okay, I'll pay. You are doing dhurtata, but you don't know that I am the one who informs everything. So that we see in, again, something similar in Alipur bomb trial. What does Shri Krishna tell Shri Aurobindo? Doesn't matter. Let them say what they are saying. It's their business. What they will understand, the judge will finally write, all this drama. It's all within me. I am the one who will ultimately write the judgment through witchcraft. All that is settled. So we find this wonderful description. Then there is, beyond this Sharubhav, there is the Akshar Brahma, the stable basis of all things. And then the Purushottama. The Gita also says, all things are within me. I am in them, but I am not them. This is something another cryptic phrase of the Gita. Shri Krishna doesn't explain much because he's in a hurry, battle has to be fought. So I am in them, I am not them. So in a certain sense, there is nothing else but the Lord. Sri Aurobindo explains this very beautifully. But what he means is that don't regard this small little thing to be, because everything is the Lord, doesn't matter, you will pick up this and say, this is what the Lord is. So there is a very subtle distinction, which is what Ravana forgot. For example, the Lord is in me and the Lord is all the becomings. Now if I say, therefore, the body is also the Lord, and so I'll take care of the body all through, and all my life I'll just be focused on the body and I am worshipping the Lord. There are people who were trying to do that, and the mother reminds them, taking cue from Sri Aurobindo's writings, quoting him that the body has to be part of the yoga, they spend all their time only thinking about the body. So this is what the Gita is drawing a very subtle distinction. Of course everything is him, all becomings. He is Adibhut. But at the same time he is saying that I am in everything as its essence. But don't mistake that this is me, and therefore you start creating all kinds of absurd forms of practices. So he reveals that. And then he says, I am not just as a silent presence, but actually I am in that becoming. I inspire nature and her works, push nature to exceed the limits of her own formations. And who are these people? In the West they are called genius. In India they are called vibhuti. And sometimes they are called madmen. I am talking of the luminously mad, not the other inferior kind of mad. They are luminously mad because they have broken through the limits. So these vibhutis, at a human level, Shri Krishna says that wherever you see any kind of greatness, know that it is God's. It is He who is manifesting. And it's a reminder to the vibhuti also, that don't think that it is you, it is God who is manifesting through you. And we see that beautifully in the Napoleon story. So Napoleon was the arm of God striding through Europe. Napoleon was Kali's instrument to usher in a big change. But it's very difficult to contain, when God moves you, you know that it's, all vibhutis know it's no more their power. Because they know that it's way beyond the limits of their personal power sees. But Napoleon started believing at one point that I am France, and France is me. And that's when we see that Napoleon was broken, as Sri Aurobindo says, and Kali threw him aside on the road. Because vibhuti you have to grow more and more humble, the more and more the divine acts through you. So there is this entire vibhuti yoga which is described. And after that, the Gita takes us to the grand vision. That look here, not only am I the goody-goody God, sweet, loving, lovey-dovey God who is, all doing good things, so merciful, I am also manifested as time the destroyer. That is a marvelous aspect of the Gita, but we'll touch it later in another talk because it's very important. Meanwhile, we'll now do some readings. So, what happens to such a man who is living in that consciousness all the time? So the Gita says that if he dies, he comes to me. Now this dying and coming to him is not like a last minute Christian indoctrination. Like what I believe Mother Teresa was doing. She felt very happy about it, that somebody who is going to die, make him a Christian. Last minute, conversion. And she was very happy that I turned him a Christian before his death. Sri Aurobindo says it's not a last moment edification of a Christian death. There is a very interesting story about it. That there was a bear who attacked a priest. So the priest was, didn't know what to do. So last minute says, hold on. He could talk to a bear, language quietly. He said, wait. The bear paused. I'll turn you into a Christian right now. The bear said, okay. So he turned it into, threw some water and he became a Christian. So he thought, Christian, abhi to sab acha hai, Christian will forgive. So next moment the bear started praying and he prayed, thank you Lord for giving me my bread. Thank you Lord for giving me my bread. And ate him all the same. So the thing is, it's not that. It has to be a lifetime, a life lived is a preparation for that moment. And this is what Sri Aurobindo says. There is no offense meant to anybody personally. All religions have this stupidity. In India, we used to read in Hindu religion, one of the bhajans, it's about Ajamil. Ajamil was a butcher. So this fellow did only one smart thing in his life, and that was he kept his son's name as Narayan. So as the bhajan goes, that last minute, when he was about to die, Ajamil adham ne में न थी क्या बुराई, मगर मौत की जब घड़ी उसकी आई तो बेटे नारायण की थी रट लगाई, तुरंत खुल गए उसके वैकुंठ द्वारे, हरे कृष्ण गोविंद हरे मुरारी. Is based on that is the bhajan goes. That last minute when the time of death came, he suddenly called his son, बेटे नारायण की, नारायण कहाँ है तू? बेटे नारायण. He called his son Narayan, and as he called Narayan, the Lord appeared before him. And the gates of Vaikuntha opened. Now, this is a bit of exaggeration. We should not start, start saying such things. The same thing like Christian edification. So, in every religion, there is this idea that just because you are baptized, you are freed. No, sir. Initiation, even where it is genuine, it's only the beginning of a whole journey. You may turn away from the journey. You may close the gates. You may walk a few steps and then just sit like a laggard, or like a stone while others are passing by. There is a story of a man who was giving a lecture to a crowd. I get very shivers, when I speak about this story. But okay, I don't want to be that man, okay. But he was giving you have satsang, there are standard sadhus who will come, nice malas. They'll say the same standard things. After which they will get the same standard dakshina. Same stories, everything same. Then they'll go. So there was this person giving a lecture, and one man was by the way passing by and he heard. And then he went on. So when he went on, he took that seriously. And he realized the great truth. So as the story goes, when he was coming by, he saw they were still sitting and listening to the lecture. And this story is told in another very beautiful way, that there was a Pandit who was giving Bhagavad Katha. And he was telling one day, Bhagwan ke naam se bhav sagar par ho jata hai. You can, cross the great ocean of the world by taking his name. And all the simple folks, oh, so nice, wonderful Maharajji. So one day, and they used to bring milk for him every day. One day the river was in speed. But suddenly they landed up nevertheless in time. Knocked the door. How you people have come? No, you told us, Bhagwan ke naam se bhav sagar par ho jata hai. You can cross the great ocean. What is this river? We took the Lord's name and we swam through. What is going to happen? He says, I can't do this. What you are doing? So therefore, it's a mixed, it's not just a mechanical repetition of name, but that faith, that love, that bond of surrender we have to form with the Lord. So the Gita here lays a great stress on the thought and state of mind at the time of death. A stress which will with difficulty be understood if we do not recognize what may be called the self-creative power of the consciousness. What the thought, the inner regard, the faith, Shraddha settles itself upon with a complete and definite insistence, into that our being tends to change. This is the secret. If all our life, our mind, it may go here, there, 100 places, but it is settled with faith onto that one thing, needful. That's where we tend to go. There is a story where mother recounts of a man who, after his death, he said, I saw him surrounded by the flowers of the service tree, and he rose straight and fused with the supramental light of Sri Aurobindo. And then she said, what was his merit? He just wanted to serve Sri Aurobindo. That's all. Nothing else. He just wanted to serve Sri Aurobindo. And just with that state that I want to serve Sri Aurobindo, people don't realize. People often say, service, what is service? See, anyways, we are serving. We may serve the ego. So we'll remain into a narrow, ignorant state of mind. That is the commonest state of humanity. We may serve our family, more or less the same. We may serve humanity. We enlarge the circle of ignorance. That's all. But when we serve the divine, we are freed from the clutch of death and ignorance. And where? Not just into extra cosmic, into just a state of the cosmic higher worlds. A person who remembers the divine, who has lived for that sake of the divine, goes into the extra cosmic transcendent divine. That's what it says. So Sri Aurobindo says, what the thought, the inner regard, the faith, the shraddha, whom do we have faith in? Into our intelligence, into all our relatives, into doctor, into 911 and 100 things, or into the one who alone is. Into that our inner being tends to change. This tendency becomes a decisive force when we go to those higher spiritual and self-evolved experiences which are less dependent on external things than in our ordinary psychology, enslaved as that is to outward nature. Now he's speaking, why he's saying this is that it's not that outwardly you're just doing a mala, dependent on outer things. It is your state of consciousness, that Shraddha is settled upon the divine. And that is what determines what is going to happen in our life. The mother says it's the highest determinism comes into play if you are having this faith in the divine. Then your higher determinism will come into play. There we can see ourselves steadily becoming that on which we keep our minds fixed and to which we constantly aspire. Doesn't matter what is our outer state. Keep saying, Lord, I want to belong to Thee alone. I want to be yours. I want to be yours. Keep saying. He will take us through everything and make sure that nothing can bind us because He has heard. Sometimes you say, okay, I've heard, don't worry. But every time you feel you are surrounded by things, people where you are likely to get entranced, keep saying, I want to be only yours, only yours. This, when the mind fixes itself, that is what is required. Nothing external. That He will arrange. Inner, external, He'll take care. He listens to that little prayer which nobody else hears. Even the dumb prayer of the four-footed things. Therefore, there, any lapse of the thought, any infidelity of the memory means always a retardation of the change or some fall in its process and a going back towards what we were before. So the moment this happens, recover it. Arey, Bhagwan, bhul gaya tha. Mele mein, I give this example of the mela. So sansar is mela jhamela. So you are going in the fair. And childhood must be remembering, Papa is holding you and Mama is also there. When you are small, Mama carries you. When you are little big, then Papa holds you. Typical relationship. And then you are carried away by this, that. Sometimes you forget. When you turn, you realize that you are catching the wrong person's finger. I have done it, so I know it. And then Daddy, where are you? I am talking as if he's my father. And then I realize, Daddy, where is Daddy? And Daddy is keeping track. He says, I'm here. Daddy did not lose sight of me. I lost sight of my dad. So, because I am mistaking him to be my dad. But nevertheless, my dad doesn't mistake. He knows that this fellow is my sheep, as the Bible would say. My flock. So, the mark is there on the sheep. My sheep, my sheep. It's a very interesting Christian mythology. I mean, symbolism is so interesting. That on the flock of sheep, there were eggs which were given in the ashram at one point of time. It was stamped on them, ashram. It's not to be taken just lightly. It's very interesting that it is ashram. So, at least so long as we have not substantially and irrevocably fixed our new becoming. Every time you go idhar-udhar, straying, Ma, I think I'm straying, mother, but I want to be yours. You remember, no? The promise you gave me? Yes, my child. Come. So she will make sure that everything will become a passage towards a greater union with her. not, we don't go back to the same state. She makes it still more comprehensive and vast. When we have done that, when we have made it normal to our experience, the memory of it remains self-existent. Then we don't have to keep saying. If you keep saying, she'll say, see, you told me no, and I have said yes, no. You doubt me, no matter, it's okay. So it becomes a self-existent state. We don't have to keep mechanically remember and offer, because it becomes a background state of consciousness. In the critical moment of passing from the mortal plane of living, the importance of our then state of consciousness becomes evident. But it is not a deathbed remembrance at variance with or insufficiently prepared by the whole tenor of our life and our past subjectivity that can have this saving power. It's not a deathbed remembrance that you write in the pocket and suddenly, people start doing that. So, the thought of the Gita here is not on a par with the indulgences and facilities of popular religion. It has nothing in common with the crude fancies that make the absolution and last unction of the priest an edifying Christian death after an unedifying profane life, or the precaution or accident of a death in sacred Benares or holy Ganges is sufficient machinery of salvation. You must understand it. The life we have lived determines what happens to us at death, during death, and beyond death. The divine subjective becoming on which the mind has to be fixed firmly in the moment of the physical death must have been one into which the soul was at each moment growing inwardly during the physical life. Therefore, says the divine teacher, at all times remember me and fight. For if thy mind and thy understanding are always fixed on me and given up to me thou shalt surely come, either which way. For it is by thinking always of him with a consciousness united with him in an undeviating yoga of constant practice that one comes to the divine and supreme Purusha. And then it says that, what is that state in which one passes. So this is the practice that we have to do. State of constant remembrance. Now this constant remembrance is whenever to start with, starting an activity, ending an activity, in between the activity, whenever. Ma goes on, and then it becomes a background state. And when it becomes a background state, then life is led along those lines. And then the Gita speaks about knowing the God in his completeness. Samagram Mam. And this is the wisdom of all wisdoms. The whole knot of the ignorance which has bewildered his human mind and has made his will recoil from his divinely appointed work will have been cut entirely asunder. This is the wisdom of all wisdoms, the secret of all secrets, the king knowledge, the king's secret. It is a pure and supreme light which one can verify by direct spiritual experience and see in oneself as the truth. So it's not something to be taken as a belief. If we live it, we will see it in our own life. But then comes the other part, but faith is necessary. If faith is absent, if one trusts to the critical intelligence which goes by outward facts and jealously questions the revelatory knowledge because that does not square with the divisions and imperfections of the apparent nature and seems to exceed it, and states something which carries us beyond the first practical facts of our present existence, its grief, its pain, evil, defect, undivine, error and stumbling, ashubham, then there is no possibility of living out that greater knowledge. Meaning thereby that, what if we see somebody who lived his life for the divine, suddenly dies at a young age? The critical mind will say, what did God do to him? And the mind endowed with faith will say, wow, he has been taken a leap. See, we read that line in Savitri, digging a tunnel through emergency. Because God uses everything. His wisdom is not confined to a very narrow. You see, this is what we see in the Gita. What is the occasion of the Gita? If you really look at it, even Gandhari, she said, she curses Krishna. Because of you, this war took place. So for her, it was the most ashubh thing to have taken place. Not realizing that every son that died on the battlefield, it was a great compassion of the Lord. Why? Because had they been alive, God knows what chaos they would have created to start with. Less burden of error they carried. And for a Kshatriya to die on the battlefield is at least a glorious death. That too, to fight and die at the hands of a godlike humanity like Bhima, it's a still more glorious death. All of them, see, when you are endowed with faith, Gandhari would have said, I know they were all errant children. My mistake. But at least they couldn't live gloriously. Your compassion gave them a glorious death. Karna, the Lord saved him, if you really look at it. Imagine if Karna didn't die, and imagine if because of him, evil won. The man would have been in the most miserable of conditions. This much he had understood. That's why he said, see, what he promised to Kunti was very interesting. He said, I will kill only one of the Pandavas. And then he says something else. He says, you will still have the five. It was a very cryptic way of saying, the moment one of them is fallen, I'll be a Pandava. He knew this much. And whom did he want to kill? Arjuna. Because he had this score to settle. Meaning thereby, if Arjuna fell, he would be a Pandava and be with them. This much he knew. And Sri Krishna was trying to save him from the ignominy by telling him, stop, you come out of this battle. Come with the Pandavas. Because he knew it's not worthy of him. Still, since he didn't listen, what a death at the hands of Arjuna with the Divyastra, and in a state where nobody can blame him. Oh, he was on the ground and he didn't have the Rath. Karna was saved. It was compassion again of Sri Krishna. So this is the eye endowed with faith, we'll see. But there is a kind of critical thinking. Oh, Krishna. See how cunningly took away Karna. He saved Dronacharya also. What about Jayadratha? Well, the fellow deserved to die 100 times. There something else came into existence. I've often spoken of this. प्रबल प्रेम के पाले पढ़कर प्रभु को नियम बदलते देखा, अपना मान रहे न रहे पर भक्त का मान न टलते देखा. He loves Arjuna. He is the one. Arjuna loves him thanks to the Lord's love. And he is the chosen one on the battlefield. Jayadratha had to die any which way. So you see how the divine goes to any extent. And if you look outwardly, you can't understand. But when you look from the point of view of dharma, which alone is Sri Krishna's business, he didn't come there to say, people will say, greater than Gandhi was Sri Krishna, who renounced this world and confirmed renunciation in Arjuna, and both of them together took to sannyas and went to the Himalayas. Sri Krishna would laugh. He will say, I have come here to establish dharma. I don't care whether my name is written in the books of the European scholars as the father of the nation. I know that I am the eternal womb of all things. And I am not just the father of this great nation, but also its mother. Who else? So, father and mother don't need to confirm that they are the father. And those who have doubt about the identity, they have to try the DNA testing. The father and mother knows. So this is how he describes that faith is necessary. The soul that fails to get faith in the higher truth and law must return into the path of ordinary mortal living, subject to death and error in evil. It cannot grow into the Godhead which it denies. If I believe that no, there is nothing like, what should be then the mother said, I don't know, maybe it is true, maybe it is not true, then you cannot grow by its very definition. I cannot grow into that which I deny. It's a absurdity. So it will start with faith because I don't see, but I have faith. Faith means to know that which yet cannot be known by any of the mental and apparatus. For this is a truth which has to be lived and lived in the soul's growing light, not argued out in the mind's darkness. One has to grow into it, one has to become it. That is the only way to verify it. It is only by exceeding of the lower self that one can become the real divine self and live the truth of our spiritual existence. All the apparent truths one can oppose to it are appearances of the lower nature. The release from the evil and the defect of the lower nature, Ashubham, can only come by accepting a higher knowledge in which all this apparent evil becomes convinced of ultimate unreality, is shown to be a creation of a darkness. So in that state you discover that all that we made so much hullabaloo about, that was not the real thing. The real thing was happening deep within. What we were whispering to the Lord and what He was whispering into our soul. Not the world of appearances which human beings see. What with entire faith and without egoism we believe in and impelled by Him will to be, the God within will surely accomplish. It's no more left to us. If we have faith without egoism, I have faith but I don't know. Let me see the proof. I have faith but provided you fulfill this ambition of mine. That's why Sri Aurobindo says an egoistic faith tainted with desire and ambition is a low and smoke obscured flame that cannot burn upward to heaven. So this faith is not tainted with egoism. Do this for me, then I'll have faith. Nothing. Even if you were to take away every drop of my blood, each drop will say, thou, 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 thou alone. So this faith, when we are endowed with, then we grow into that spontaneously. But the egoistic mind and life we now and apparently are must first surrender itself for transmutation into the hands of that inmost secret divinity within us. So Krishna is within. Krishna, all things are in Krishna. And He is the transcendent Godhead, Purushottama, beyond all. And then he says, the great souled who open themselves to the light and largeness of the diviner nature of which man is capable, are alone on the path, narrow in the beginning, inexpressibly wide in the end, that leads to liberation and perfection. The path seems narrow in the beginning because you have to really withdraw from all this world of appearances and concentrate only on the divine. Seems narrow. But as we grow into it, then suddenly the divine within, you begin to see Him in entire creation. It becomes wide as we grow. This absolute self-giving, this one-minded surrender is the devotion which the Gita makes the crown of its synthesis. All the rest is a preparation. A stage comes when there is the complete self-giving, not only of works, not only the turning of the intelligence within, but within, outward, everything. Not only the works that I am doing, but my feeling, my heart, my action, everything is turned, given to the Lord. My thoughts turned to Him, my heart running towards Him. Through every appearance is seeking Him and finding Him and discovering Him. In all the energies and dynamism of the life, to find Him, to live Him, to feed Him, to be fed by Him. All this becomes the state of the devotee. This is the self-giving, which is devotion. So devotion has nothing to do with sitting in a large pandal with a khartal and Babaji comes with 5-6 malas and he is waiting for the thing to be over. Then he says, "Bachcha, moh maya se mukt ho ja." Kya karna hoga Guruji? Purse nikal ke rakhte. Guruji, what we have to done to get free of the maya moh? Take out your purse, give it here, because that's where the maya is. Whereas the other way round is so beautiful. One devotee I remember she was telling me her experience. She was going to Sri Aurobindo's room and she had thought she will make this offering and kept it in the purse. And when she went to Sri Aurobindo's room, she was searching the purse and just forgot. And she is a clairvoyant lady, so she didn't know what to do. Where is that? Feeling a bit nervous. Where is that offering gone? Is the Lord not accepted? All these thoughts. Suddenly she hears a voice. Sri Aurobindo tells her, you can offer your money anywhere in the ashram. Here you offer yourself. Here you offer yourself. As the mother says, our character, our way of being, that we must give. Money also is needed. It's the most outward offering. Energies, way of being, so that this may change and grow into the likeness of the Lord. All action and effort are by this devotion turned into an offering to the supreme and universal Godhead. Whatever thou doest, whatever thou enjoyest, yuktahar viharasya. Gita is making a very general, broad statement. You're not saying don't go for picnic, you will fall. Don't go and watch a movie. Don't eat in Surguru. We are doing blasphemy. Don't wear colored dresses. Nothing. It is saying, do all this in a state of union with me. Look at this. Whatever thou doest, whatever thou enjoyest, whatever thou sacrificest, whatever thou givest, whatever energy of tapasya, of the soul's will or effort thou puttest forth, make it an offering unto me. Here the least, the slightest circumstance of life, the most insignificant gift of oneself, out of oneself or what one has, the smallest action assumes a divine significance and it becomes an acceptable offering to the Godhead, who makes it a means for his possession of the soul and life of the God lover. That story that somebody sent 1 rupee to mother, the mother kept in her hand, went into a trance. He says, God will find it difficult to pay back to this man anything. And that's how it should start, till whole being is taken up by the Lord and given to him. The distinctions made by desire and ego then disappear. This for God, give to Caesar what is due unto Caesar, give to the devil what is due unto devil. No, give to God whatever you doest, even actions which are moved by that. As there is no straining after the good result of one's action, no shunning of unhappy result, but all action and result are given up to the Supreme, to whom all work and fruit in the world belong forever, there is no further bondage. For by an absolute self-giving, all egoistic desire disappears from the heart and there is a perfect union between the divine and the individual soul through an inner renunciation of its separate living. So this is how the finite, the equal divine presence in all of us, very powerful, makes no other preliminary condition except faith, which is what he has said. If once this integral self-giving has been made in faith and in sincerity and with a fundamental completeness, all have access to this gate. All can enter into this temple. Our mundane distinctions disappear in the mansion of the all-lover. It's so beautiful. So don't worry if somebody stops at the gate and asks for your gate pass. Stand at the gate and remember the Lord. She will come to you and you'll have a marvelous experience. She has allowed you waiting time in her memory, which may not have been there if you were, okay, come in. Everything is felicity. There the virtuous man is not preferred, nor the inner, nor the sinner shut out from the presence. Oh, he is a bad guy, he cannot be allowed. Sometimes these things are done and it's not correct. To the Lord, anybody should be allowed to go. Only you should not create a nuisance, that is understood. But anybody and everybody. Together by this road, the Brahmin, together, mark the word, together by this road, the Brahmin, pure of life and exact in observance of the law, and the outcast, born from a womb of sin and sorrow, and rejected of men, can travel and find an equal and open access to the supreme liberation and the highest dwelling in the eternal. People often say, what are the special thing about the ashram? I say, one of them is that all people can walk together. It's not like Deluxe Darshan, special person, this person. All of us. We don't ask, who are you? Where are you coming from? Man and woman find their equal right before God. For the divine spirit is no respecter of persons. Look at the power of these words. The divine spirit is no respecter of persons or of social distinctions and restrictions. All can go straight to him without intermediary or shackling conditions. Intermediaries. No priest between us and God. No one. Our task is only to facilitate to go. Nothing else. Not to stop. Not to, prevent. In fact, that is very dangerous to stop or prevent somebody from reaching to the divine. If, says the divine teacher, even a man of very evil conduct turns to me with a soul and entire love, he must be regarded as a saint, for the settled will of endeavor in him is a right and complete will. Swiftly he becomes a soul of righteousness and obtains eternal peace. Their weakness and the stumblings of their human strength make no difference. This is my word of promise, cries the voice of the Godhead to Arjuna, that he who loves me shall not perish. A beautiful, supreme assurance. Still we say, ये तो चला गया रास्ते से, इसका कोई उपाय नहीं है. You don't know, उसका ही उपाय है. वो ही करेगा. कहते हैं ना, there is a phrase in Hindi, मरता क्या ना करता. A good man is very difficult to turn a good man to God. Huh? Say, I am a good guy. See, everybody considers me as somebody very good. But somebody who is a Lord, you are my only hope, my refuge. So, and then he closes this, that in the divine lover of man who takes refuge, the Shudra hampered by 1,000 hard restrictions, woman shut in and stunted in her growth by the narrow circle society has drawn around her self-expansion, those two on whom their past karma has imposed even the very worst of births, the outcast, the pariah, the chandal, find at once the gates of God opening before them. And there are people who will say that in India, casteism and all this. Obviously, they have either not read the Gita or they are souls deluded who know not the Lord in the body. And yet, the best solution for them would be to turn to the divine. And he says that he is not the limited Godhead of religion. And finally, I'll just take 3-4 minutes more. The liberated eye of knowledge in the spiritual consciousness does not in its outlook on the world see this struggling lower nature alone. We see a man struggling, having defects. But the divine sees the divine possibility inside. People often ask, Arjuna was not the best of the Pandavas or the best of human beings. Yudhishthir was truthful to a default. And then there was, Vidura, who was Mahatma. There was Sahadev, the meditating man. Why Arjuna was chosen? Because Arjuna alone could be the instrument. We see the outer nature and its limitations. If we perceive only the apparent outward fact of our nature and others' nature, we are looking with the eye of ignorance and cannot know God equally in all. In the sattvic, the rajasic, the tamasic creature, in God and titan, in saint and sinner, in the wise man and in the ignorant, in the great and in the little, in man, animal, plant and inanimate existence, the liberated vision sees three things at once as the whole occult truth of the natural being. How does God see us? First and foremost, it sees the divine prakriti in all, the true Swabhav. We may not know it, but it sees that which is happening inside, that little thing. It sees her as the real power in all things. To bring it out is its real business. That which gives its value to all this apparent action of diverse quality and force. And it reads the significance of these latter phenomenon not in their own language of ego and ignorance, but in the light of the divine nature. When mother was, you see, people didn't understand Dada and why mother was so. You know what mother said? He is the one person who could psychicize the material consciousness. And at one point he says, you could have been born with a lot of intellectual things, but you deliberately choose to keep that behind so that you could do this work, which is very difficult, the obscure material consciousness. So we look at things outside. Of course, he was a wonderful person, those who knew him closely. But we see outside, but the divine sees that inner swabhav, that inner aspiration, which we may not see. And he reads the outer in the light of this and not the other way around. Therefore, it sees too, secondly, the differences of the apparent action in Deva and Rakshasa, man and beast and bird and reptile, good and wicked, ignorant and learned, but as action of divine quality and energy under these conditions, under these masks. So the same action, Karna and Arjuna, it sees differently. That's why Shri Krishna tells to Arjuna, you are of a Deva nature, you don't worry. But Duryodhana, after all, or the same question that Vali says, why you killed me? And helps Sugriv. So the same action he sees differently. Based on the inner becoming, it's seen in that light. It is not deluded by the mask. There are people who are very good guys, and that's why people say, oh, Karna ko kyun aise hua? It is not deluded by the mask, but detects behind every mask the Godhead. It observes the perversion of the imperfection, but it pierces to the truth of the spirit behind. It discovers it even in the perversion and imperfection, self-blinded, struggling to find itself. The liberated eye does not lay undue stress on the perversion and imperfection, but is able to see all with a complete love and charity in the heart. See, that's how Churchill became such a wonderful instrument. If you look outwardly, he used to drink, then they debauch, most likely. Same with we see with Napoleon. At the same time, he hated India, but the divine saw something else. That's what matters at the end. And finally, it sees the upward surge of the striving powers of the will to be towards Godhead. It respects, welcomes, encourages all high manifestations of energy and quality, the flaming tongues of the divinity, the mounting greatnesses of soul and mind and life in their intensity is uplifted from the levels of the lower nature towards heights of luminous wisdom and knowledge, mighty power, strength, capacity, courage, heroism, benignant sweetness and ardor and grandeur of love and self-giving, preeminent virtue, sweetness and ardor and grandeur of love and self-giving, preeminent virtue, noble action, captivating beauty and harmony, fine and godlike creation. The eye of the spirit sees and marks out the rising Godhead of man in the great Vibhuti. At one place, Shubinda was asked, but some of these great people had defects. He says, yes, great people have great defects. And then he says, why won't the divine use greatness if it serves his purpose? So he said, oh, no, he's not a good guy. Let me not use him. This is nature rising towards its own summits, pressed by the will. And that is how it closes. It is the Godhead who manifests himself in the great thinker, the hero, the leader of men, the great teacher, sage, prophet, religious founder, saint, lover of man, the great poet, the great artist, the great scientist, the ascetic self-tamer, the tamer of things and events and forces. The work itself, the high poem, the perfect form of beauty, the deep love, the noble act, the divine achievement is a movement of Godhead. It is the divine in manifestation.